On April 14th, Trump and Bukele actually had a televised meeting at the White House where they mocked the court system. On the same day, Stephen Miller claimed that Abrego Garcia was not sent to El Salvador by mistake.
Okay. He was not mistakenly sent to El Salvador.
Okay, so do you still
He's an
believe
illegal
he is a
alien
member of
from
MS?
El Salvador.
But as we've talked about, it's important to note that the administration has admitted their mistake to the court at least 3 times. First by Robert Sina, acting field office director for enforcement and removal operations at ICE, and twice in briefs filed by the Solicitor General, D. John Sauer. Attorney General Pam Bondi has also falsely claimed that 2 courts ruled that Mr. Abrego Garcia was a member of MS-13.
He was illegally in our country. He had been illegally in our country. And in 2019, 2 courts, an immigration court and an appellate immigration court, ruled that he was a member of MS-13 and he was illegally in our country.
And Bukele even labeled him a terrorist, but no court has ever concluded that Mr. Abrego Garcia is a terrorist or a member of MS-13. A court issued the withholding of removal the last time Abrego Garcia had been in court because he had, in fact, been a victim of gangs in El Salvador. According to findings by an immigration court judge, David Jones, for years the Barrio 18 gang extorted and threatened the family. The gang regularly threatened to kill him and his brother and rape his sisters if his parents did not pay regular bribes. One day when Mr. Abrego Garcia was around 12 years old, Barrio 18 gang members arrived at the home and told his mother that they were going to take Kilmar and force him to join the gang because his family had not paid the bribe money. Kilmar's father managed to save his son by giving the gang members all the money that they demanded. But the gang continued to stalk Kilmar whenever he left his home. His father, a former police officer, paid them off, but the threats persisted. The police could not help. The gang infiltrated the police. After repeated moves and increasing danger, Kilmar's family sent him to live with his U.S. citizen brother in Maryland. In Maryland, Kilmar apparently lived quietly, working construction and raising a family with his partner Jennifer, a U.S. citizen. In 2019, while seeking day labor at a Home Depot, he was arrested with 3 other men despite no charges or known gang ties. The only evidence offered by ICE was a bull's hat and a claim by a confidential informant linking him to a New York-based gang he had no ties to. Local police had no record of any charges against him. Mr. Abrego Garcia applied for release on bond, and ICE opposed his release, claiming that he was a dangerous gang member based only on the Chicago Bulls hat and hoodie, as well as the confusing confidential informant testimony. And on the basis of ICE's claims, out of an abundance of caution, the immigration court denied Mr. Abrego Garcia's request for release on bond, so he continued to remain in the detention center. From there, he filed an application for asylum with an application for withholding of removal. Now, as stated by the UN, asylum is a form of protection which allows an individual to remain in the United States instead of being removed, deported to a country where he or she fears persecution or harm. And seeking asylum is legal immigration. Under U.S. law, people who flee their countries because they fear persecution can apply for asylum. They're called asylees. And relevant to Mr. Abrego Garcia's claim of asylum, at the conclusion of the 2-day hearing, the immigration judge found that Mr. Abrego Garcia had, quote, provided credible responses to the questions asked. His testimony was internally consistent, externally consistent with his asylum application and other documents, and appeared free of embellishment. Judge Jones found that Mr. Abrego Garcia also provided, quote, substantial documentation buttressing his claims. However, the judge denied his asylum petition on a technicality. He had missed the 1-year deadline. Instead, he was granted a withholding of removal under INA Section 241B, which is a protection against deportation to El Salvador due to a clear risk of persecution by Barrio 18. Now, withholding of removal offers less protection than asylum. Unlike asylum, it doesn't grant legal status or a path to citizenship. It only bars deportation to a specific country. It's granted if the person proves a clear probability of persecution based on race, religion, nationality, social group, or political opinion, which is actually a higher standard than asylum. Judge Jones found that Mr. Abrego Garcia had met this standard. He had credibly shown that his life had been threatened by Barrio 18 on multiple occasions. And at the conclusion of the hearing, Mr. Abrego Garcia was released to return to his family in Maryland. Now, neither ICE nor local law enforcement ever made further claims about his membership in any gang. And since then, Kilmar has lived peacefully, supporting his family and caring for his disabled son. He had complied with immigration check-ins and had no legal issues until March 12th of this year, when he was pulled over while driving with his son. Now, on March 12th, 2025, after finishing a shift as a sheet metal worker apprentice in Baltimore, Mr. Abrego Garcia picked up his son from his grandmother's home. That's when ICE officers pulled him over. They told him his status had changed and threatened to call Child Protective Services unless his partner, Jennifer Vasquez-Sura, arrived within 10 minutes to retrieve their son. Mr. Abrego Garcia was shuffled around to several locations over the next few days. His wife, Jennifer, spent days trying to locate him, discovering that he'd been transferred between multiple facilities across the country. She repeatedly informed the government that Kilmar had been granted a withholding of removal, but her objections were ignored. So Ms. Vasquez-Sura had no idea where her husband was until her brother-in-law sent a news report about the people who had been sent to El Salvador's torture prison by President Trump. That article contained a picture of a man who had a tattoo and scars that matched Mr. Abrego Garcia's. More news media photos confirmed that he was indeed being held in El Salvador's terrorism confinement center, despite the fact that he had a valid withholding of removal, and despite the fact that he was never given a hearing or was ever formally charged with any wrongdoing. According to the Attorney General, what the Supreme Court meant when they said that the government has to facilitate Mr. Abrego Garcia's return is just that if President Bukele decides to return him, the United States has to, quote, provide a plane.
This is international matters, foreign affairs. If they wanted to return him, we would facilitate it, meaning provide a plane.
Now, in the same meeting, President Bukele confirmed that he has no intention of returning Mr. Abrego Garcia to the United States or releasing him within El Salvador.
How can I return him to the United States? Like, I smuggle him into the United States, or what do I do? Of course, I'm not going to do it.
The government submitted a declaration by DHS Acting General Counsel Joseph Mazzara, who said that the U.S. was prepared to facilitate his entry into the U.S. by not allowing him to re-enter the United States. If Mr. Abrego Garcia presents to a port of entry, the United States will, quote, remove him to a third country or terminate his withholding of removal because of his membership in MS-13. Again, no mention of the regular immigration process. And to add injury to the insult to the injury, Trump says he really does want to send American citizens to the terrorism prison in El Salvador.
I said, homegrown's next. The homegrown's built. You got to build about 5 more places.
Yeah, that's fair.
All right.
So we are not in a good spot. In this case, the government has told 3 courts that Kilmar Abrego Garcia was wrongfully removed, and a unanimous Supreme Court said that the government must facilitate his release. And yet, Trump is now openly flouting the court's order in order to keep an innocent man imprisoned. The ramifications here could not be more dire.